Linda and Mark spent 2 years planning their move to Portugal. They watched every YouTube video. They joined every expat Facebook group. They built a spreadsheet that tracked every conceivable expense: rent in a small town outside of Coimbra, utilities, groceries, private health insurance for the first year, until they could access the public system, the occasional train ticket to Lisbon, a modest travel budget to explore Europe now that they finally had the time. They ran the numbers against their combined Social Security checks, roughly $3,400 a month, and the math worked beautifully. They sold their house in Ohio. They gave away most of their furniture. They shipped 2 boxes of keepsakes and flew to Lisbon with 2 suitcases each, and a sense that they had, finally, after 40 years of working, cracked the code. 6 months into their new life, Linda checked the mail and found a letter from the IRS. It was not a friendly letter. It was not a routine letter. It was a letter informing them that they had failed to file a required report on their Portuguese bank account, that the penalty for this failure started at $10,000 per violation, and that additional penalties could apply depending on the outcome of a review. Linda and Mark had never heard of the FBAR. They had never heard of FATCA. They had assumed reasonably that moving their money to a Portuguese bank meant they were now in the Portuguese system and the American system was behind them. They were wrong. They are not alone. And that letter is why I am making this video. Most of the conversation about retiring abroad focuses on the visible costs. What is the rent? What does a meal cost? How much is health insurance? These are the numbers people put into their spreadsheets. These are the numbers the YouTube videos show you. These are the numbers that make the dream feel real and achievable and just a few practical steps away. But the retirement abroad industry, and I want you to hear this clearly because it matters, the retirement abroad industry has a structural incentive to show you the sunny side and skip the rest. The real estate agents earn their commission when you buy the condo. The visa services earn their fee when you file the paperwork. The YouTube channels earn their ad revenue when you click on the drone shots of Mediterranean coastlines. Nobody earns anything from telling you about the letter from the IRS. Nobody earns anything from warning you about the currency collapse that turns your carefully calculated budget into a shortfall. Nobody earns anything from explaining that the bank you have used for 30 years might close your account the moment you change your mailing address to a foreign country. But these things happen. They happen regularly. They happen to people exactly like Linda and Mark. People who did the research, people who built the spreadsheets, people who thought they had accounted for everything. And I am going to walk you through every single hidden cost that the brochures leave out, because you deserve to make this decision with your eyes fully open. Let me start with the biggest, most consequential hidden cost that almost no American retiree abroad is warned about, because it is the one that generates the letters from the IRS. The United States is one of only 2 countries in the entire world that taxes its citizens based on citizenship rather than residence. The other country is Eritrea. That is the list. Every other nation on earth taxes based on where you live. Move to France, you pay French taxes. Move to Mexico, you pay Mexican taxes. Move to Thailand, you pay Thai taxes. But if you are an American citizen, you pay American taxes no matter where you live, no matter how long you have been gone, no matter whether you ever set foot on American soil again. Your citizenship is a permanent tax obligation that follows you to every country on the planet. Most American retirees abroad do not end up owing the IRS additional taxes. The foreign earned income exclusion and the foreign tax credit typically prevent double taxation. And Social Security income is often taxed only by the United States under most tax treaties, though not all. The tax burden itself is usually not the trap. The trap is the reporting. The trap is the paperwork. The trap is the fact that you are required to file a federal tax return every single year for the rest of your life, even if you owe nothing. Even if your entire income comes from Social Security and a small pension, even if you have not touched American soil in a decade, the filing requirement does not go away. And alongside the tax return, there are additional reporting obligations that most Americans have never heard of because they never needed to know about them until they opened a bank account in a foreign country. The FBAR, the Report of Foreign Bank and Financial Accounts, must be filed if the total value of your foreign financial accounts exceeds $10,000 at any point during the calendar year. $10,000 is not a high threshold. If you sold your house in the United States and deposited the proceeds into a Portuguese or a Mexican or Panamanian bank account, you cross that threshold on day one. If you have a checking account with a few months of living expenses plus a savings account with your emergency fund, you have probably crossed that threshold. The FBAR is filed separately from your tax return. It is filed electronically through the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, and the penalty for failing to file it, even accidentally, even with no intent to hide anything, can be $10,000 per violation. If the IRS determines the failure was willful, the penalties escalate dramatically, up to the greater of $100,000 or 50% of the account balance. These are not theoretical penalties. They have been applied to American retirees living abroad who genuinely did not know the requirement existed. Then there is FATCA, the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act. FATCA requires you to report specified foreign financial assets on Form 8938, filed with your tax return, if those assets exceed certain thresholds. The thresholds are higher than the FBAR threshold: $50,000 for single filers, $100,000 for married couples, so not every retiree abroad triggers FATCA reporting. But if you sold a house and moved the proceeds overseas, if you have a retirement account that you transferred to a foreign institution, if you inherited money and deposited it abroad, you may cross the FATCA threshold without realizing it. The penalty for failing to file Form 8938 starts at $10,000, with additional penalties if you fail to file after being notified by the IRS. I am telling you this not to scare you away from retiring abroad. Millions of Americans do it successfully and comply with these requirements every year. I am telling you this because Linda and Mark did not know, because the expat forums are full of people posting variations of the same question. I just found out about the FBAR, and I have had a foreign account for 3 years. What do I do? Because the professionals who help people fix these situations, the tax attorneys and the CPAs who specialize in expat compliance, charge hundreds of dollars an hour and thousands of dollars for a full remediation. The hidden cost is not the tax. The hidden cost is the professional help you need to hire to stay compliant with a system you did not know applied to you. Now, let me take this one layer deeper, because the tax reporting burden is only the first hidden cost of the American banking system reaching into your new life abroad. The second hidden cost is that foreign banks increasingly do not want American customers at all. This sounds absurd when you first hear it. You have money, you want to deposit it in a bank. Banks exist to take deposits. What possible reason would a bank have to turn away a customer with cash in hand? The reason is FATCA. Under FATCA, foreign financial institutions are required to report information about accounts held by U.S. citizens to the IRS. If they do not comply, they face significant penalties, including a 30% withholding tax on certain U.S. source payments. For many banks in the countries where American retirees want to live, banks in Portugal, in Mexico, in Costa Rica, in Thailand, the compliance burden of reporting to the IRS is not worth the relatively small revenue they earn from a retiree's checking account. The cost of the compliance infrastructure, the legal review, the staff training, the risk of getting it wrong exceeds the profit from the account. So, the bank makes a rational business decision. It stops accepting American customers. This is not hypothetical. This is documented. Americans have arrived in their chosen country, signed a lease, and then spent weeks being turned away from bank after bank, told politely but firmly that the bank does not open accounts for U.S. persons. In some countries, the major international banks will still accept American customers, but they charge higher fees, require higher minimum balances, or limit the services available to U.S. account holders. In other countries, particularly smaller markets or less internationalized banking sectors, the options may be extremely limited. The solution is always findable. Local expat communities know which banks still accept Americans. Specialized services and advisors can help. But the solution takes time, takes effort, and in some cases takes money in the form of higher fees or minimum balances. It is a hidden cost in time and money that the brochures do not mention. And the banking friction does not only affect your new accounts abroad, it can affect your existing accounts back home. Some American banks, brokerages, and investment firms have policies that restrict or close accounts when the account holder moves to a foreign country. You change your mailing address to an address in Mexico or Portugal or Thailand, and the bank's compliance system flags the change. A letter arrives informing you that your account will be closed in 30 days. Or your brokerage informs you that you can no longer trade, or that your retirement account must be transferred to a different institution. This does not happen at every institution. The major national banks and the large brokerages like Vanguard, Fidelity, and Charles Schwab generally have experience with international clients and have policies in place to handle them. But it happens enough, and it is unpredictable enough, that you need to plan for it. The practical precaution is straightforward. Before you move, contact every financial institution where you hold an account. Ask them directly, do you allow account holders with foreign addresses? Are there any restrictions I should know about? And is there any documentation you need from me before I move? Get the answers in writing if you can. If an institution tells you that foreign addresses are a problem, you have time to move your accounts before you leave. If you discover the problem after you have already moved and your address is already changed, you lose the advantage of time and you may lose access to your money during the transition. This is a solvable problem, but it is a problem that most retirees do not know exists until they are living inside it. There is another hidden cost that operates more slowly than the IRS or the bank, but over time, it can be more damaging than either. Currency risk. When you retire abroad, you are making a currency bet whether you realize it or not. Your Social Security check arrives in US dollars. Your pension, if you have one, arrives in US dollars. Your withdrawals from American investment accounts are in US dollars. But your rent is in pesos or euros or baht or colones. Your groceries are in the local currency. Your health insurance premium is in the local currency. You are earning in dollars and spending in something else. That means the exchange rate between the dollar and your local currency is not an abstract number on a screen. It is your real purchasing power. It is the difference between a comfortable month and a tight one. It is the difference between eating out and eating in. It is the difference between affording your prescription refill and skipping it. The dollar has been strong for several years. If you look at the exchange rates right now, the dollar buys a lot of euros, a lot of pesos, a lot of baht. That strength is part of why retiring abroad looks so affordable on a spreadsheet. But currencies move. They always move. They move in response to interest rate changes, to political events, to economic shocks, to things that have nothing to do with you and your retirement plan and everything to do with the decisions of central bankers in Washington and Frankfurt and Tokyo. A 10% decline in the dollar against your local currency means your Social Security check buys 10% less than it bought last year. A 20% decline, which is not unusual historically, means your entire budget is now 20% underwater. If your monthly expenses were $1,600, they are now effectively $1,900. If your monthly expenses were $1,900, they are now almost $2,300. On a fixed income, that is not an adjustment. That is a crisis. There are ways to manage currency risk. Keeping some of your savings in the local currency creates a buffer against short-term swings. Choosing a country where the local currency is pegged to or closely correlated with the dollar, like Panama or Ecuador, which use the US dollar directly, eliminates the risk entirely. Diversifying your retirement income across multiple currencies, if you have the assets to do so, reduces your exposure to any single exchange rate. But the first step is simply understanding that the risk exists. When you look at a cost of living estimate for Mexico or Portugal or Thailand, and the numbers work beautifully at today's exchange rate, you are looking at a snapshot of a single moment in time. Currencies do not stand still. Your retirement will span decades. The exchange rate that makes your budget work today is not guaranteed to be the exchange rate that makes your budget work 5 years from now, or 10 years, or 15. Plan for it to move. Build a cushion. And if you cannot build a cushion, consider Panama or Ecuador, where there is no exchange rate to move. Inflation is the cousin of currency risk, and it deserves its own place in this conversation because it operates differently in the countries where American retirees tend to go. Inflation in the United States is measured and reported and discussed constantly. You feel it at the grocery store and the gas pump. You see it in the news. It is a known enemy. Inflation in a developing country can behave differently. It can be higher. It can be more volatile. It can hit certain categories, food, energy, imported goods, much harder than others. If you are living in Mexico on a fixed dollar income and Mexican inflation spikes because of a drought that drives up food prices, your carefully calculated grocery budget is suddenly wrong. Not wrong by a little, wrong by a lot. And unlike in the United States where you might have access to food banks or senior assistance programs or family support, in a foreign country, you may have none of those safety nets. The specific trap here is that your income is fixed in dollars while your expenses are subject to local inflation. If Mexican inflation runs at 6% and your Social Security cost of living adjustment runs at 2.5%, you lose 3.5% of your purchasing power every single year. Over 5 years, that is a meaningful erosion. Over 10 years, it can be the difference between a comfortable retirement and a stressful one. The trap is made worse by the fact that you made the decision to move based on the cost of living at the time you moved. You budgeted for the Mexico of today. You did not budget for the Mexico of 10 years from now, where rents have doubled, and groceries are 40% more expensive, and your Social Security check buys less every year. This is not a reason to avoid retiring abroad. It is a reason to budget conservatively, to assume costs will rise faster than your income, and to build a margin of safety into your monthly numbers from the very beginning. There is another cost that is not hidden so much as it is systematically underestimated by almost everyone who makes the move: the cost of going home. When you retire in the United States, you do not think about the cost of visiting your children because your children might be a drive away, or a short domestic flight, or at worst a few $100s for a plane ticket once or twice a year. When you retire abroad, visiting your children means an international flight. It means $1,000 or more per trip, sometimes significantly more if you are traveling during peak seasons when families tend to gather. It means the cost of a rental car or transportation while you are there. It means the cost of gifts and meals and all the small expenses of being a visiting parent or grandparent that you did not used to think about because they were absorbed into the general flow of your monthly budget. And that is just the planned trips. The unplanned trips are the ones that break your budget. A parent gets sick, a sibling dies. Your adult child goes through a divorce and needs you there. A grandchild is born prematurely and is in the NICU, and you need to be in the waiting room. These are not optional travel expenses. They are mandatory. They are the cost of being a human being with people you love who live in a different country. And you cannot budget for them because you do not know when they will happen or how many there will be. You can only budget for the possibility. Most retirees abroad do not budget for the possibility. They budget for the planned visits, the annual trip home for the holidays or the summer, and they assume that is the travel line item. Then something happens and they fly home on 3 days' notice at full fare, and the trip costs twice what they budgeted, and the entire travel line item for the year is blown in a single week. If you are going to retire abroad, you need a family emergency fund, not the general emergency fund for medical expenses or a broken refrigerator, a specific fund for last-minute flights home. And it needs to be large enough for at least 2 trips in a single year, because the year you need it once is also the year you might need it twice. Now I want to talk about something that catches an enormous number of new expats off guard, even though in retrospect, it seems obvious. The initial setup costs. When you move to a new country, you are not paying the expat cost of living. You are paying the tourist cost of living, plus the new arrival cost of living. You are staying in short-term rentals while you search for a long-term lease. And short-term rentals are always more expensive than long-term leases, sometimes double or triple the monthly rate. You are eating out for every meal because your kitchen is not set up yet. You are paying for taxis and Ubers because you do not know the public transportation system yet. You are buying everything from scratch: furniture, kitchen supplies, linens, towels, the 1,000 small items that accumulate in a home over years and that you sold or gave away before you moved. You are paying visa fees, legal fees, translation fees, notary fees, the small administrative costs of establishing yourself in a new country that nobody puts in the brochure. The first year abroad is almost always the most expensive year. Not because the country is expensive, but because you are inefficient. You are paying for convenience because you do not yet know how to be efficient. You are paying the foreigner markup because you do not yet speak the language well enough to negotiate or comparison shop. You are making mistakes, small ones, renting an apartment, and discovering it has a problem you did not see. Buying a car and discovering it needs repairs you did not budget for. signing a contract in a language you do not fully understand, and discovering later what it actually says. These are not character flaws. They are the universal experience of moving to a new country. But they cost money, and most retirement budgets do not account for them. The final hidden cost I want to discuss is the one that is hardest to quantify because it is not financial. It is the cost of being far away from the people who would help you if you were close. When you are 78 years old and you need a ride to a medical appointment, in your hometown there might be a neighbor, a friend from church, your adult child. In a foreign country, you pay for the taxi. When you need someone to check on you after a surgery, in your hometown, there is a network, formal or informal, that notices if something is wrong. In a foreign country, you may be relying on an expat friend who is also in their 70s and has their own health challenges. When you need an advocate in a hospital who speaks the language fluently and understands the system, in your hometown that advocate might be your daughter. In a foreign country, you are hoping the hospital has a translator service and that the translator understands your medical history well enough to communicate it accurately to a doctor who has never met you. These are not reasons to stay home. They are reasons to build a support system before you need it. To choose a country with an established expat community where people look out for each other. To budget for the things that community and family provided for free when you lived in the United States. To understand that the line item in your budget labeled transportation or household help is not a luxury. It is the price of being independent in a place where you do not have 40 years of social infrastructure built around you. Let me bring all of this together into a framework you can actually use. If you are serious about retiring abroad, you need to build a budget that is not the one you see in the YouTube videos. The YouTube budget has a line for rent, a line for food, a line for health insurance, and a line for fun. The real budget has all of those, plus a line for tax compliance, the CPA or tax preparer who specializes in expat returns, and will cost you $300 to $600 a year for the federal return alone. Plus a line for currency buffer, an extra 10 to 15% on top of your monthly expenses to absorb the year the dollar drops. Plus a line for the family emergency fund, at least $3,000 to $5,000 set aside exclusively for last-minute flights home. Plus a line for setup costs in year 1, minimum $5,000, probably closer to $10,000 for the short-term rental and the furniture and the visa fees and the mistakes. Plus a line for local help, the taxi to the medical appointment, the translator for the legal document, the handyman to fix the thing you cannot explain in the local language well enough to get the right person on the phone. If you build that budget and the numbers still work, you are ready. Not ready in the sense of having everything figured out. Nobody has everything figured out, but ready in the sense of having accounted for the things that actually derail people. If you build that budget and the numbers do not work, that is not a failure. That is a successful piece of research. It is better to discover on a spreadsheet that the hidden costs are too high than to discover it after you have sold your house and moved your life across an ocean. Linda and Mark are still in Portugal. They hired a tax professional who specialized in expat compliance. They filed the missing FBARs through a program the IRS offers for people who made honest mistakes. They paid a penalty that was smaller than the $10,000 starting point, but still large enough to hurt. They are okay now. Their life in Portugal is by most measures good, but they will tell you, if you ask them, that the letter from the IRS was the single most terrifying moment of their retirement, and it was entirely avoidable. If someone had told them about the FBAR before they moved, if one of the YouTube videos had mentioned that American citizenship comes with a permanent tax filing obligation, if the glossy brochure had included a single paragraph about the hidden costs. That is why I made this video, not to talk you out of retiring abroad, to make sure you do it with your eyes open, your paperwork in order, and a budget that accounts for the things nobody warns you about. Here is a number that should stop you cold. The average Social Security check